people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Newly crowned undisputed super lightweight champion Chantel Cameron posted this via her Instagram stories. You'll notice the two X's. One next to Chantel's name, and another
X next to Natasha.
Ring Magazine very recently updated their women's pound-for-pound rankings, and Natasha Jonas has cracked the list at number 10.
Chantel's looking for a fight with Natasha.
She might be. You know, Chantel Cameron is currently under orders by way of the WBO to satisfy her mandatory challenger, former WBO champion, two-time WBO super lightweight champion, Christina Lenardatu. And I've yet to see Chantel address that order.
Many months ago, I actually spoke to Chantel about that fight. And she was receptive to that fight when I spoke to her about it, but I don't think she's as receptive to that fight here today. I've seen an interest expressed in a potential Jessica McCaskill rematch.
Presumably for Jessica's belts at 147 pounds. I've seen an interest from Chantel in a McCaskill rematch. Here we see an interest in a Jonas fight, but I don't see any reception, any reaction, anything at all in reference to the order from the WBO that came down a little over a week ago.
Looks like Chantel's only got a hankering for the big fights. The big fights. I mean, a Lenardatu fight would be a fan-friendly fight, an explosive fight, a much better fight than the McCaskill fight turned out to be. That was pretty one-sided.
And Chantel still seems more interested in running it back with Jessica than...
If she doesn't fight Christina Lenardatu, the WBO title at 140 pounds is forfeit, and it will go to Christina.
That's the way it is. Irrespective of who Chantel Cameron ends up fighting in her next fight, whether it's Natasha Jonas, or Terry Harper, or Jessica McCaskill, irrespective of who she does fight, if she doesn't fight Christina, that's what's gonna happen.
She won't be undisputed anymore, and Christina Lenardatu will in fact become a three-time WBO super lightweight champion.
I don't actually know that Chantel Cameron is in the running for a Natasha Jonas fight. You kind of get the sense that what Chantel wants to do is move up in weight and challenge Natasha for what she's got at junior middleweight, whereas when it comes to Natasha, I get the sense that she wants to move down to either welter or junior welter.
They both seem to want a McCaskill fight.
Chantel's willing to give Jessica a rematch, and Natasha wants to challenge Jessica for what she's got down there at welter.
It's up to Rick Ramos and Jessica McCaskill to decide which fight they are more receptive to, though. Let's not forget, there are political boundary lines to be addressed. Natasha Jonas ain't a matchroom fighter. She's with Boxer.
Whereas Jessica and Chantel, they're on the same side of the street, so you kind of get the sense that Chantel might be closer to that McCaskill fight, that rematch, I should say, than Natasha is.
In any event, if Chantel don't fight Christina, the belt is forfeit, and Christina becomes a champion for the third time by way of the WBO, at which point she has a belt.
Natasha Jonas can move down from junior middle down to junior welter, perhaps challenge Christina for the WBO title. The same applies to Terry Harper. I've been telling you this whole time, I don't think either of those two girls are going to stay at junior middle very long. They both might very well be on their way south from 154 pounds.
Mary Spencer has a lot to do with that.
The risk of sounding like a broken record. In a scenario like this, where Chantel ends up fighting someone other than Christina Lenardatu, Christina becomes a champion and also becomes an option for either Natasha Jonas or Terry Harper, because she'll have a belt that they can fight for, and the situation would be less political than trying to get a boxer fighter to fight a matchroom fighter. Christina Lenardatu isn't with either promotional outfit.
No, she's a Lou DiBella entertainment fighter.
She can go to either side of the street without issue.
So here's the bottom line. it doesn't look like Natasha, Jonas, and Terry Harper are gonna fight in the undisputed junior middleweight title fight. By all rights, it looks like they're both set to move down.
And at least right now, it doesn't look like Chantel Cameron is interested in defending her title against her mandatory challenger, Christina Lenardatu.
Unless something changes, at least right now, it doesn't look like either of those two fights are set to go down.
And if they don't, that will greatly affect the landscape between 140 and 147 pounds. Two divisions that may end up seeing even more action than they have the past 12 months.
Jessica McCaskill will remain a person of interest,
For Natasha Jonas, for Terry Harper, and for Chantel Cameron.
at which point both Rick Ramos and Jessica McCaskill will put their thinking caps on, get their heads together, and decide which fight is best for them.
There is set to be a lot of movement between 140 and 154 pounds, 147, really, as both remaining champions at that weight, I anticipate, are set to descend to the lower weights in the coming year. Men's lightweight news. Two-division champion on his way north of super featherweight, Shakur Stevenson, took to his social media and stated, "If the little puppy don't want to fight, let's get who's next in line. Isn't it William Zepeda or Cambosis? Don't really matter. I'm ready to smoke some regardless."
I like this kid's energy.
In my previous video, we talked about how Team Cruz blew off the idea of facing Shakur Stevenson. They were more receptive to a Vasil Lomachenko fight, even though Shakur and Vasil, they're on the same side of the street.
Neither of those fucking fights are gonna happen, man.
Isaac Cruz now fancies himself Mr. Big in the britches for going the distance with Gervonta Davis. Not even winning the fight, not winning the fight, so much as surviving it and being able to put up a fight. And for that, he's turning his nose up at everyone. Isaac Cruz responded to Shakur Stevenson by saying,
Don't be eager to fight me.
"Because when we are in the ring, one by one, you will know that it's not the same."
See the lion that sees him coming.
Is he a lion? I thought he was a pit bull.
The number of fights this guy's been turning down the last 12 months, he's more of a chihuahua. He turned down a Ryan Garcia fight. I haven't forgotten about that.
Oscar De La Hoya reportedly made these guys a 7-figure offer for Isaac Cruz to come over to the Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN side of things to box Ryan Garcia. And to that, Sean Gibbons told them the only way the fight happens is on Showtime. Who the hell is Isaac Cruz to dictate terms to Ryan Garcia?
You're basically telling this guy the only way the fight happens is if he crosses over to your platform when you were still coming off the loss to Gervonta.
It may not seem like it to some, but Isaac Cruz very much is a protected fighter. They turned their nose up at the offer from Oscar De La Hoya. They turned their nose up at a potential Michelle Rivera fight.
His PBC stablemate.
And they more recently turned their noses up at a potential Shakur Stevenson fight. That's 3 times, 3 different guys.
Give a fuck if you fly the same flag as this guy. I don't care if you live down the street from him.
I don't care if you sat next to him in math class. I don't care about whatever your personal preferences are and what your biases are. I have to look at this situation and evaluate it objectively, irrespective of nationalism and tribalism. And what I see is Isaac Cruz doesn't want to fight anybody.
Every time somebody calls him out.
Ryan Garcia, Michelle Rivera, Shakur Stevenson.
This guy's not headlining his own shows, you know. This guy didn't go on to become some big marquee fighter, big marquee attraction. You lost!
I know he's a fan-friendly fighter. I know that he has potential, but potential in and of itself that has not been realized is not reason enough to turn your nose up at these guys.
The dichotomy of a potential Isaac Cruz versus Shakur Stevenson fight. The pressure fighter versus the pure boxer.
The dichotomy of that matchup, stylistically, oftentimes it does favor the pressure fighter, but there are some circumstances, some instances like Sonny Edwards versus Felix Alvarado, where the pure boxer,
He can overcome that pressure fighter and secure the W.
it doesn't always happen that way. In fact, more often than not, the pressure fighter eventually overwhelms and runs over that pure boxer. Think Rakhimov versus Barrett, Zelfa Barrett. Think Jarrett Hurd versus Erslan De Lara.
Lemieux versus Endom.
What it usually goes is that pressure fighter overwhelms and runs over that pure boxer. But in a potential Shakur Stevenson versus Isaac Cruz fight, the saving grace for Shakur is that he does seem to compete at a much higher level than Isaac. So while Isaac might have the right style for the job, he may not have the right experiences.
He may not have all the right ingredients.
You're not competing at the same level as a Shakur Stevenson because you dropped a decision and went the distance with Gervonta Davis. So let's get that straight. Let's get that.
I want to make that abundantly clear.
Way I see it, Shakur Stevenson is either a solid A level to A minus, pure boxer. And Isaac, he could be anywhere between a B minus to a C plus pressure fighter.
The level at which the fighters compete also affects how the fight plays out.
It's not just the styles. William Zepeda, unbeaten William Zepeda. He also responded to Shakur Stevenson.
A mí no me menciones. A mí mándame un contrato. ¿De cuándo y dónde es el baile? Y ahí estaremos.
Translated means, don't mention me. Send me a contract for when and where the dance is, and we'll be there.
To which Shakur Stevenson responded, LOL, let's do it. It'll be like old times. You get the sense that these two guys, they've shared the ring before. Not as professionals, but as amateurs.
Well, I don't think Golden Boy Promotions is willing to send William Zepeda over to the top-ranked ESPN side of things for a Shakur Stevenson fight. He's one of the only good guys they've got, and they're stable. They're not going to risk him.
Forget about it. The saving grace for Shakur Stevenson is he's still on the right side of the street. He's in the right place to get all the right fights. At 135 pounds, he'll be in a pole position to challenge the winner of Devin Haney versus Vasyl Lomachenko for all of those alphabet titles.
Maybe they put him in there with Richard Comey. Maybe they put him in there with Jermaine Ortiz.
Irrespective of the politics we've become accustomed to seeing at 135 pounds that have prevented many fights from happening, Shakur Stevenson's going to be okay. He's going to be all right, whether without Isaac Cruz, with or without William Zepeda. Those are all titillating matches, interesting ones, but unfortunately, the political boundary lines in the sport.
I mean, could you imagine the kind of reception that Zepeda versus Isaac Cruz would get? William Zepeda versus Isaac Cruz somewhere on the West Coast.
The scenes for a fight like that, man. And what a fight it would be. What a fight it could be if not for these political boundary lines.
A lot of people struggle with this. There are a lot of people out there, they don't want to believe that Isaac Cruz is a protected fighter based on which flag he flies. But unfortunately for those guys, he's on PBC Island, isolated from everyone else.
Not going to fight Ryan. He's not going to fight Shakur. He's not going to fight William. He's not going to fight anybody.
He's just going to keep barking from behind that fence.
Finally, in men's super middleweight and light heavyweight news, Sean Porter states Canelo Alvarez will lose to Dimitri Bivol in rematch.
We now know that Canelo's not going to be fighting Dimitri straight away. He wants to have a tune-up kind of fight in May.
I expected Canelo to dominate Triple G. I just think Triple G and Canelo are on two different levels, and Canelo didn't show that, Porter told IFL TV. The fact that he didn't show that against Triple G in his trilogy fight leads me to believe he may not be as prepared as I thought he would be in a rematch with Bivol. Canelo wasn't as prepared as he should have been against Bivol. He didn't have multiple game plans. He didn't make any adjustments. He didn't make one adjustment against Bivol. And I knew that coming back against Triple G, we were going to see a very dominant Canelo that we'd seen in the past and come right at Triple G like he did. We didn't see anything different about Canelo.
I think the guy's burnt out.
What I've been saying the last year or so, last 2 years, he's been keeping a busier schedule than all of his contemporaries. And as a result of that, I think that guy's burnt out. I think he needs a break.
Yeah.
One thing we did see differently was his gas tank. This guy was not conditioned for 12 rounds. You have to be conditioned to go 12 hard rounds, no matter who you're in the ring with. I think if Canelo had been in better condition, that fight would not have gone the distance. Based on his fight with Triple G, I don't think he beats Bivol in a rematch. Before this fight, I thought Canelo would come back in the ring and be a better version of himself and have more variety in the rematch with Bivol. And I thought he'd beat Bivol in the rematch.
I remember hearing leading up to the Bivol fight that Canelo Alvarez was on a vegan diet.
And I've heard a sentiment expressed in some circles that, a big part of the reason Argentinians who are notorious for being durable fighters with great engines and great power, a big part of the reason Argentinian fighters are so formidable is they have a high protein diet.
Yeah, but we're talking meat and potatoes, not lettuce and legumes.
I feel like I'm going out on a limb here, but could the dietary change Canelo had ahead of that Bivol fight, could that have affected his performance?
That in tandem with a busier schedule than all of his contemporaries. Consider that this guy unified an entire weight class in 11 months. Consider that this year, he was more active than David Benavidez, more active than Jermall Charlo, more active than Demetrius Andre.
Hell, two of those guys didn't even fight this year.
Canelo Alvarez doing too much.
Sean Porter's not the only former champion that doesn't like Canelo Alvarez's chances against Dimitri Bivol in a rematch. Nonito Donaire, 4-division champion Nonito Donaire, he's pretty much saying the same thing.
There might be a big difference between being 168, but 175, I don't think Canelo has a chance because Bivol is just too big in that division. I think he should take his time to rest, and heal up. He doesn't need to get in there right away, But if that's the case, I think he'll go for Zordo. I think it's a good fight for him, but Benavidez is what people is going to want.
The saving grace for Canelo is that Dimitri Bivol isn't chomping at the beat for a rematch with him. Recently, Bivol has been lukewarm on the idea of facing Alvarez once again, stating that the rematch is not interesting like it was before, and that money is good, but legacy is better. He's also maintained that he plans on continuing to fight at 175 pounds, and his goal is to become undisputed champion by beating current WBC, WBO, and IBF crown holder Artur Beterbiev.
I mean, listen, Canelo Alvarez is supposed to be tuning up with somebody in May.
Could be against the winner of Zach Parker versus John Ryder, this weekend's fight.
Oh, I know you guys are probably thinking to yourselves, what about the winner of Benavidez versus Plant? But Benavidez versus Plant is rumored to be going down in March, whereas Canelo, he's set to be returning in May.
That is too quick a turnaround for Canelo Alvarez to face the winner of that fight. Not for Canelo, but the winner of that fight, whoever it is.
They're not going to fight each other in March and then go right into a Canelo Alvarez fight a little over a month later.
It's not the least bit realistic. Not for the winner of that fight, irrespective of who you think the winner is going to be. Ideally, Canelo would fight the winner of that fight in September, and I think he should fight the winner of that fight in September as opposed to Dimitri Bivol because I don't like his chances.
I just told you, between the stylistic matchup, Dimitri Bivol being a defensively responsible fighter, a cerebral boxer with a pesky style,
guy who's very difficult to pin down, very difficult to hit, coupled with his natural size, the fact that he's a natural light heavyweight. Canelo can't put a dent in this guy, even if he can land, even if he can connect with a few power shots. This guy can take them.
Well, he won't take very many of them because he's defensively responsible.
Canelo Alvarez can't break him down the way he broke down Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant and wore out Callum Smith. He ain't got the power at light heavyweight that he has as a super middleweight.
It's not a knock on Canelo, but some mountains are just too high to climb. He's still one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the sport, arguably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport, but he's only human. He's got his limitations.
Nothing to be ashamed of. You've got guys with far more generous physical dimensions than little old Canelo Alvarez, who's really not a big guy, who are terrified, mortified at the prospect of moving up from super middle up to light heavyweight. He's at least done it 2 times.
Look at Jermall Charlo. He's been sitting in the kiddie pool at 160 for how long now? He's scared to go up to super middle, let alone light heavy.
I have to agree with Sean and Nonito. I don't like Canelo's chances in a rematch.
I just don't.